Greetings all and welcome to Lucas Sprues. In today's video we're going to be having a look at two kits from Eduard of the FW190. First of all the FW190 A5 and then I'll have a small comparison to it and their later A8 kit. So this video is part of a series where I'll be having a look at several different 190s in 1/72nd scale. If you haven't seen the previous one, I did the Tamiya 190 A3, so go check that one out if you haven't. But without further ado, let's have a look at these two kits. Moving on to the next FW190, we have the A5 from Eduard. That's part of their weekend edition range. So the A5 differs a fair bit from the A3, mainly in that it's actually about 15 centimeters longer. I'm not really an expert on the 190 and all the finer details, but that is the big difference with the A5. And I believe that was done to both make the center of gravity a little bit better for the pilot, but also so that they could later on put more weapons kits and bombs on the underside, and it would be a bit more balanced. So it was sort of extended around about there, and I will put the Tamiya sprues up against this one to sort of show you that. But in terms of the Eduard kit, it's in a very large box. It's a bit awkward to try and fit it all in the camera, but I'll do my best here. On the front, we've got a really lovely render of a 190 in a winter camouflage scheme, probably on the eastern front, I'd imagine, seeing that it is shooting down a PE2. And you can see they're on fire, and there's some damage, and the rest of the squadron's all over the place. And there's some more 190s diving in to finish off the rest of them. So a very nice, action-packed looking little scene there, and it looks really beautiful with the rendering and all the weathering and the soft faded winter camouflage. I think it looks really awesome. On the sides here, just some of the usual details. I mentioned that you have 4 markings and that it's for adult collectors. Just a couple of repeats of the box art on the sides. And on the top, we have the 4 markings that are included. And as you can see, you've got a fair bit of variety here. We've got one marking for Jagdgeschwader 2 in France. Then we've got one from the Soviet Union, part of Jagdgeschwader 54. And it's in a bit of a different RLM 70 and 71 looking camouflage with some random bits of yellow. Then we've got one from Jagdgeschwader 1 in the Netherlands. And finally, we've got the one featured on the box, which is that one from Jagdgeschwader 26 with the winter camouflage applied over it. Repeat again of the box art on the other side, and nothing on the back, which is pretty usual for Eduard. Opening up this box, as you can see, it's rather empty, really, for the size of it. We've got our instructions here, and then we have 3 bags, one containing all of our clear sprues, another containing what looks like 2 dark grey plastic sprues, and then we have another bag here containing all of our decals. Looking at our instructions, as is typical for Eduard, they are printed in colour on a sort of glossy paper, and they're in a booklet format, which I'm a big fan of. On the front of them, we've obviously got a repeat of the box art here, and then a bit of history about the development of the FW190, and including a extra little bit about the A5, and talking about how it evolved from the A4. As it mentions, moving it forward, moving the engine forward by 15 centimeters, which was to move the center of gravity, allowing more weight to be carried aft for bombs. And obviously this would be a lot more common in the later variants. Opening up, we have a sprue map. We've also got our colour guide down the bottom here, and a few little warnings and keys in English and Czech. As you can see, a lot of the parts in this kit won't actually be used, and that's pretty common with Eduard kits. You get a lot of commonality between their different releases in terms of recycling the same sprues, which is good for them because it means that they can save a bit of money, and it means you've also got a fair few spare parts left over, which can be useful, and you've got a fair bit of variety with a lot of these different kits. Assembly begins with the cockpit. Very similar to the Tamiya one, we have a base piece for the cockpit tub with 2 separate pieces for the sidewall details. Then we've got what looks like 2 extra little panels here. Not too sure what they're for. They might be some sort of form of armor or something that goes on the back wall here. Then we've got this sort of center console that goes between the rudders, and we've got a joystick. Once you've assembled that, you've got a base piece or a bottom part for the base of the instrument panel, and then you've got a seat, and as you can see, we've got decals included for the seat belts, with these 2 there for the little side ones. And then we've got another set for the main ones that sort of go over your shoulders there. Turning over the page, we're then adding the top part of the instrument panel, which also includes the gun sight. And it looks like we've got decals included for the instrument panel detailing. And once you've added that, you've also got this front sort of bulkhead piece, these exhaust parts which go on either side of the fuselage halves, and we're sticking the cockpit tub in there along with the engine details. Moving on to the wings, we have a wing spar section which has to get added into place along with what looks like some wiring for the exhausts, I believe, and possibly part of the landing gear as well, which gets attached to that. Then we've got a fair few other little bits and pieces. We've got some more exhaust parts to add to the bottom there, along with these sort of frames that go inside of the wheel wells, and the cover for the sort of middle section of the wheel well itself. At this stage, it looks like we've got to cut a hole out. Not too sure what that's for. I'd imagine it's oh, it might be for the pitot tube, which I believe was located quite inboard on the wings on the A5s. But yeah, then we've got some more bits and pieces for the cannons by the looks of things. Not too sure what this part is. It appears to attach to part of the exhaust area, so it might be an extra exhaust pipe or something like that that sort of gets added there. And then we have another piece that goes in the middle of the wing section there before the two upper wings are added. So there's quite a fair bit of fiddly assembly going on for the wheel well details, which looks like they're pretty nicely done. Although, yeah, if you're a little bit new, it might be a bit fiddly. But moving on, we then have the upper cowlings getting added with a piece here for the machine gun area and then a sort of more forward section. We've got the glare shield here, which goes over the top of the instrument panel. And once you've added those, you can join the wings and the fuselage together. Then we've got separate parts here for the ailerons, which I'd imagine you could pose if you wished. And then we've got single pieces here for the horizontal stabilizers and the rudder, which again, you could probably pose the rudder if you so wished. And on the front, we've sort of got the oil cooling ring, which I believe was inside of that. And then another piece that goes on top of that and gets attached to the front of the fuselage. Then we've got our landing gear, which is landscape rather than horizontal there. And as you can see, similar to the Tamiya one, we have a strut with a landing gear cover going on, plus a wheel. And then we've got that extra little arm piece which goes inside there and links up to that one. Got a separate tail wheel here, and that's in the extended position. And on top of having to add the tyres, we also appear to have to add the rim and the hub to the wheels. So yeah, there's a little bit of assembly going on with that. A little bit less clear and easy to follow as the other steps in this one, but it doesn't look too complicated. A little bit of sub-assembly with the tyres, but as long as you do that, then you should be all good. I believe you might even have an option for different tyres depending on the tread by the looks of things. You've got optional parts there. We've also got a little bump here that has to get cut or sanded off to make it a proper A5. Moving on, we then have the we've got the interior or the inside wheel door covers, which are I think a bit more on the earlier 190s. So they've got a piece for the actual door and then a little strut there, which they attach to. We've got one of our antennas plus the step ladder. Looks like we have to drill out a hole and add another antenna to the rear there. And then for the front of the wing, we've got some extra, I believe, machine guns and the pitot tube. Moving on, we've got the propeller with, again, the cooling fan attached to it. Although it doesn't appear there's any sort of pin or system for it to lock into the propeller and still be able to spin. So unfortunately, you're probably going to have to glue the propeller. I'm sure a lot of people don't mind doing that, but I personally, since I like to do animations every now and again, like to have a propeller that spins. But I'm sure you can find a way to have it do so if you so wished. And for the canopy, you've got options for either D3 or D7 if it's open or closed. I'd imagine they're just a little bit different in terms of thickness so that they fit on the railings better. But either way, you've got the headrest and then the frame that holds it in place to add to the canopy. And once you've added those in, you can put it in the open or closed position and add the front windscreen. There's still a couple more pages to go. But that appears to be our marking. I was expecting that they would have options or show how to do the landing gear in the closed position. Pretty self-explanatory for the main wheels. You could just glue the door covers over the top of the area there, and that would be that. But for the tail wheel, you're probably going to have to do a bit of cutting since I believe it partially retracts. But I'm sure if you wanted to do it, you could, but otherwise it doesn't appear to be shown in the instructions. Then we've got our marking guides, and Eduard, in my opinion, do a really fantastic job with these. Not only do they have them in colour, which is really awesome, it's super clear to see how they are, and you can get a little bit of inspiration for how they've sort of weathered and researched their models, But they also have a fair bit of history about not only the plane itself, but also oftentimes the pilot or the unit, which I think is great. It adds a little bit of extra history and is always interesting, I think, when you're doing projects like these, to know a bit more about the people in the aircraft. So that's awesome that they do all of that. I'm not going to bother reading it, but if you want to have a look at it, obviously just pause the video. But yeah, in color, very easy to follow. And they've also laid it out so that you only see the main markings for each scheme in these views. And on the back, you'll have a separate guide for all of the common stencils, which I think makes it very easy. You can put those in place and then, as appropriate, do the camouflage and the main markings, or whichever is better to do. We've got Scheme B here, which is again really nicely done in color, very clear, and with a lot of nice research and background information. And yeah, nice variety of different schemes. I think Scheme A and C are probably the ones I'm most tempted by, because I'm a bit interested in the Eastern Front, but they're also quite unique. Interestingly, the yellow or the brown colour on this one doesn't appear to have an RLM colour code, so it's perhaps it was a bit of a in the field or a specialised paint that only this unit was using, so that's a little bit interesting, a bit non-standard. And if you want a more standard aircraft, then you can go with either D or B. I think all of these aircraft have a bit of mottling, or at least a bit of a challenging faded aspect to them, so they're not the easiest schemes to do, but for 190 schemes, either A or C again are probably the easier ones, since they don't have as much of the mottling. I should also mention you've got a notes section for anything you might want to add when you're building this model. I might be tempted to use this since I'll probably do a build video for this one, so it might be handy to have notes about anything in particular to mention in my video. And then on the very back you've got a bit of marketing for Eduard's various extra accessories, which are pretty nice. If you want to spend a bit of extra money, you can do that and get a lot more detail or specific parts for the kits, which is cool. And yeah, they're advertising more of their 190 kits. So yeah, for the most part, instructions are really great. They're in a booklet format, which I love, as I've mentioned. They're in color, so very easy to see with color guides what you're painting. It's pretty easy, I think, to follow all of these steps. There are some very fiddly assemblies, but as long as this kit's well engineered, they should all be relatively easy to do and should fit together quite nicely. And really, apart from just not showing how to do the landing gear in the retracted position, which may not even really be an option for this kit, but something you could probably do, they're really excellent. Moving on to the sprues, the main ones are in this single bag here, which I will open up. And we might as well start with the main sprues here, with the wings, fuselage, and some of the other smaller control surfaces. And as you can see right off the bat, I'll move the camera, I'll move the light a bit closer. For the underside of the wings here, you can see all of the fantastic Eduard detailing with the recessed rivets and panel lines. I don't think they've done every single rivet on the 190 if you're really fanatic about getting your rivets right, but for the most part they've got the main ones there and it all looks really quite excellent. All of those access hatches and the hinges for the flaps look really great, and yeah, the surface detail's really clean, and I have to say I'm a pretty big fan of Eduard's molding quality and details, and I think this kit's no exception. You can see there's various little holes and finer small details which would have been a bit tricky to mold, but it's done really cleanly and yeah, looks really great. On our upper wings, again, all recessed panel lines with some raised bulges and bumps where appropriate for things like the sort of armoured area here, which I think that might have either housed ammunition or it might have been to reinforce the wings where the crew would walk. But yeah, it all looks really fantastic. And I like the little control hinges and parts there that are all done. So yeah, fantastic looking detail there. We've got various options here for cowling pieces, which one of them appears to have these latches for the accessing the engine and the other one doesn't. And then this one here seems to have raised coverings over the machine guns, which is interesting. Then we've got our fuselage hubs here, and I'll try and... It's a bit awkward because this is a very large sprue really for a kit of this size. It might be a bit easier if I have it upside down. But yeah, you can still see all of that fantastic recessed panel lining and rivet details. They've done a nice job on the exhaust area, and I think there might be a little bit of flash on that part, but yeah, with a knife you can easily clean that up and stick the exhaust through there, which looks good. Yeah, and all the little details on the latches and the raised bulges around the engine. And they've even done the little access hatch here for the controls, and I think the battery was located in there. And they've done a raised part here for the hinge, so yeah, looking really fantastic. The other fuselage half looks really great as well with all of its little rivets. Although I think there's a few differences in terms of the access hatches, which they've done a nice job capturing. Given how much Eduard seem to research their schemes and stuff, I think they've probably done a really accurate job of this kit, knowing how much effort they put into theirs. Other wing half looks really good, no imperfections, all pretty similar to the other one. Various options here for the machine guns, and one of them has got less of a bulge. I believe that this might be for a later version of the 190, whereas this is the A5, which I think didn't have as many bulges around the engine cowling. But yeah, you've got a few different options there. Our horizontal stabilizers there, which look pretty good, especially considering that they're done in one piece. And yeah, I've got to say the ejector pin marks appear to be pretty much only on the sprue. There's not even any on the inside of these parts here, which is amazing. And for the inside of the wheel well, there's a bit of detail, like some raised ribbing molded to the inside of the upper wing halves. There's a little bit of detail molded to the cockpit sidewalls, although the 190 doesn't have too much really there. There's a bit of framework and a little wheel there for the controls, but that is pretty much it. Most of it's on the side control panels. Got our rudder there, which looks really great. I think they might have even tried to do some rivets on those raised ribbings, but it's a bit too hard to really see. It does look like there's actually a few scratches, and I look really closely on this part, and a few little imperfections, but nothing too major really. And again, ailerons are looking pretty good as well, with their raised detailing and the little hinges and control cables and wires. The little one there sticking out. So yeah, this sprue is looking pretty good. I'll quickly grab the Tamiya sprue here and see if I can sort of show you. It's a little bit tricky because the Tamiya one has the rest of the engine cowling molded, whereas it's a separate piece on this one. But you can already kind of see that the A5 is a bit larger. The tail is sort of lined up there, and as you can see, the shaping's pretty much identical on both of these kits, up until you get to sort of the front section, where on the A5, the engine cowling section that we have is basically already taking up the entirety of the A3s. So yeah, there'll be a little bit more length by the time you add on the front of the engine cowling there. So it's a little bit of a noticeable difference, especially if you've got the kits side by side, but if you didn't, it probably would be a little bit harder to tell. But yeah, this sprue's looking pretty good. We'll move on to the next one. So here we have our second sprue, and this has a lot more of the finer parts and a lot of different options and bits and pieces. A lot of it we won't be using in our kit, such as the radar antennas, and I think that's a later model, thicker bladed propeller. So yeah, like I've said, they recycle their toolings, which is clever. It means it's a little bit more cheaper for them, and you get more options for different kits. I'll try and cover most of the basic stuff that we've got. Looks like we've got our wheel covers there for the inside of the landing gear bays. They kind of look identical off from the bat, but I'm sure there are some subtle differences between them. But yeah, they've done a nice job with all the recessed rivets or holes, perforations, whatever they're called, on the inside there. Antennas won't be used on this one, but they look alright, apart from a bit of flashing. We've got one of our seats. I'd imagine, yeah, I think that's the only seat we've got. And yeah, it looks pretty decent. Got various options for racks and bombs, although I don't believe any are included for this kit. This is the bulkhead, which I think kind of keeps the engine and the control panel separate. This will be the propeller we use for the A5, the slightly narrower one with the little adjustment points. There is a bit of flash and a bit of a seam line on these ones, but nothing too serious that you can't sort of lightly sand off. We've got the main part of the cockpit tub there. Unlike the Tamiya one, the rear section of the canopy sliding area is actually molded to it, which makes it a little bit simpler, but there will be some more parts down the track. But yeah, for the most part, it looks pretty good. Rudder pedals are pretty basic, but really, you're not going to see them very easily through the canopy there, so I can understand why they've done it a little bit more basic. Got the front section of the cowling, which, as I mentioned, I believe housed the oil cooling system, and it looks pretty good. There's a little sort of piece here to help with molding it, which you have to remove, but that shouldn't be too tricky. Got our engine details there, which sort of shows the 2 rows of cylinders. You're not really going to see much of that anyways, because it's hidden behind the cooling fan over here. But it is nice that they've included them, and they look pretty cleanly molded and nicely detailed given how simple they are. Quite a number of different landing gear parts here, with obviously various designs of hub and 2 different types of wheels. I think we used the earlier sort of style here with all the holes in it for the A5. But yeah, I'd imagine you can pick and choose depending on the aircraft. They might have used them at different times. We've got various parts for our instrument panels here. There's two different options for the sidewall details, reflecting different variants of the FW190, so you'll have to pick the right one for this kit. Or it looks like there's a smooth one, which is probably not going to be for this one, given that they usually include those kind of things for the Profi packs, which I'll talk about a bit later. Yeah, then we've got our main instrument panel here in two sections. They've done raised circular rivet or raised lines for the gauges there, which makes it a little bit easier to paint. Although I'd imagine it's probably better to use the decals and use a little of a product of some kind to help them sort of settle into the details. Or you could just use these smooth instrument panels, which might be a little bit easier. This looks like part of the landing gear bay that we sort of looked at, but it looks pretty cleanly molded. Can't really comment too much on the details since I don't know exactly what it would look like, but from what I've seen, it looks pretty cleanly molded, so that should be good. Got various different antennas and armament options by the looks of things, all of which seem to be pretty cleanly molded, apart from a bit of flash here and there, but nothing that can't be sanded. Got our joystick in the corner along with the stepladder, which looks pretty good. Then we've got various racks and more antennas and that sort of center pedestal piece for the cockpit. Got that little bit of wiring for the wheel well, and we've got one of the wing spars here with all of the nice raised details and all the rivets for where the cannon barrels would go, all looking quite fantastic. Got our landing gear bay doors, two different versions. I'd imagine again it's for different variants of the 190, and they've all got a little bit of recessed and raised details on either side, which all looks pretty cleanly molded. Not too much flash on them either. We've got our spinner and sort of the gearbox segment of the engine, which all look pretty good. A few more bits for the landing gear, which look pretty solidly molded. There looks to be a little bit of flash on these ones, but again, can clean that up pretty easy. A few more various little bits and pieces. I think these are sort of the parts that go inside the wheel well with the sort of structural bits. Got our exhausts, more cannon options by the looks of things. And yeah, then we've got our glare shield, which has a little bit of flash on the middle there, which will need a bit of a cleanup. And yeah, tail wheel here, which they've done a nice job with all of the details on that one. Landing gear struts, cleanly molded, and again, very nicely done with the detail. We've got our headrest here and the little bits of framework there to hold it up. So this sprue's got a little bit more flash and a few more imperfections than the last sprue. I'd imagine it's probably because this one's used a little bit more, seeing as it's a more common set of parts. But looks like it's all going to be pretty easy to clean up with a bit of sanding, and all the details that are here look pretty good. The last set of sprues we have are the clear parts. And we've got quite a few different canopies. I believe basically how they've done it is they've got the later blown sort of style canopy that has a bit more of a bulge to it. But most of the 190s would have used this sort of earlier type, which was a little bit more smooth. And we've got an opened or closed option, which I think the difference is they're a little bit wider at the base, because I think they would have sort of opened up a bit. But otherwise, they're pretty much all similar. Then we've got our main front windscreen, which is common to all 190s, and we've got our gun sight there, which is absolutely tiny, and we have these two mysterious clear parts that I have no idea what are for, but they obviously weren't mentioned in the instructions, and I think on the sprue map it said that they weren't used for this kit. But as you can see, the quality of these clear parts is pretty good. There doesn't really appear to be any major scratches or any imperfections, and not much flashing at all, if any. The bulgy sort of rounded parts of the canopies do have a little bit of distortion on them, but really for how curved they are, not too bad at all. And I'm sure on the real aircraft it probably was a little bit distorted anyways. But yeah, the less distorted or less bulgy earlier type canopy looks a bit better in terms of that kind of distortion. And yeah, they look pretty clear and nice and shiny, so yeah, pretty fantastic looking clear parts there. Finally for this kit we have our decals, and there are two sheets in this single bag here, which I shall open up. So we have a set of, or a sheet here for all of our common stencils, and you'll notice that we even get two versions of some of them, like for these walkway markings we have a black and a red set. We've got white and black markings for all these sort of other common stencils. I'm sure if you really didn't want to, you could just skip doing these ones, but I think it's fantastic that they've bothered to do all of them. And the quality on them is all pretty good. You can read pretty much all of that writing except the white one, but it's hard to tell if that's just because it's not as well done or if it's just because it's on a very light background. But yeah, all of the details on it look really good. You can see even some of the lines and details on this little piece here, which I think goes on the headrest. Got all your different grades for the oil and the fuel types, and yeah, all of the markings look pretty good for the common stencils there. For our main markings, we've also got the instrument panels, which look pretty good. There is a bit of excess film, if you can sort of see the glossy parts around the edges, which you might have to trim so that it fits a bit better to the instrument panel. But the seat belts look pretty nicely done, and yeah, all of those common cockpit stencils look pretty good. And the markings done for the main markings look pretty good as well. You've got your common Luftwaffe roundels there, which look pretty good. You've got the tail symbol, which is done in a style so you could have it in a censored version, or yeah, in these two parts. So that gets around, I think, legal issues with printing. I probably won't be using them, but yeah, if you want to, they're included, which is good. A lot of people I know really like to have them more authentic, so good inclusion. All of the other markings for the individual aircraft look pretty good. There doesn't appear to be too many imperfections, although there does seem to be a bit of a strange film on them. As you can see, it's a bit patchy in some areas. So yeah, you might want to still do gloss varnish before you apply them, just to prevent silvering, and then put some varnish over the top to give them a more uniform finish. Otherwise though, Eduard decals tend to be of pretty nice quality. These markings are a bit interesting. They appear to be a few different country flags, so I'm not too sure which scheme that one's for. I might have to have a quick look actually. Okay, so I've had a quick look, and just because I was so curious about the different flags, and it appears that the particular pilot of this aircraft, I'm not really going to attempt his name because it looks a little bit like I'd butcher it, but Fritz is his first name, which I think I can manage. He appears to have added a flag for his various diplomatic and combat deployments for each country he's visited, so that's pretty cool, a nice unique feature of this aircraft, and a bit of story about this pilot. So yeah, again, I really like the history behind all of Eduard's choices in terms of markings being a mix of variety as well as history. And yeah, all the quality, like I've said, pretty good apart from that sort of weird film issue, but it should be workable. I wouldn't say they're as good as cartograph decals tend to be, but they are still of pretty good quality. So that's pretty much it for the Eduard A-5. As you can see, it's a pretty detailed kit with a lot of different options and some really nice choices for markings. The instructions are pretty clearly laid out, although obviously it's a bit more complicated than the Tamiya kit, so probably not the best for beginners, but definitely a great option if you want a more detailed 190 or a specific version. So this tooling, or this particular kit, came out in 2023 according to Scalemates, although it was originally a 2015 tooling, so it's been reissued a few times and had a few different parts and things added. It's one of several 190s that are on Eduard's catalogue at the moment. Another one is the A-8, which we've also got an example which we'll have a quick look at. And as I've mentioned, it's a weekend edition, so that's their more basic kits. Their Profi packs, which I haven't got an example of the 190 Profi pack, unfortunately, but I have looked at the 109 G6, G5, and the Hellcat from Eduard in the Profi pack form. And basically with those kits you get some extra markings and some photo etch for some even more fantastic detailing. But if you want a more basic one, the weekend editions are still pretty fantastic, and the Profi packs just add a bit of extra challenge and a lot more detail. Moving on to the next 190 we have in the family, which is jumping up to the A8 series. So I won't look too closely at this Eduard one, since it's pretty similar in terms of layout and even uses some of the same sprues as the A5, but we will have a quick look at the box and the markings, and also note some of the little differences here and there. But I kind of mainly got this one because this scheme is the one that is used on a restored 190, which I've seen at a few air shows, and it's a pretty fantastic sight seeing one of them flying. Even though it has got a Soviet engine instead of the proper BMW, it's still amazing. So yeah, this particular box shows the 190 shooting down a P-51, looks like a B or a C with the Malcolm hood, and it's in British colours with D-Day stripes, and there appears to be a lot of smoke coming out of it and some fire, which looks pretty cool. Very similar to the other one, although it's just a P-51 rather than a whole squadron of PE-2s. Very similar layout. We've got our marking options on the top here. There's a little bit less variety here, but I think the A-8 was a bit more heavily used in the West, so a little bit less variety in terms of camo. But we've still got a few different quirks here and there, like this particular aircraft seems to have some RLM4 sprayed on the side, and there's some different varieties in terms of modelling and obviously the unit markings. But I think I'm pretty much set on doing this one from Focke-Wulf 54, which is the same one used on the restored one that I've mentioned. Yeah, otherwise, opening up, it's pretty much the same. You have instructions, and then a set of 2 sprues in one plastic bag. The exact same clear parts. All of your decals in here, and they're all pretty similar. Although they've actually got a second set of the tail markings there. But yeah, all of the unit markings again look really quite fantastic. So opening up, we have the exact same set of sprues for the smaller details. Although having a look at this one, it appears to be a lot cleaner and in better condition. Possibly due to the fact that this kit's slightly older, so by that stage the tooling might have been a bit newer as well. Although there are still a few bits of flash here and there, it is, for the most part, it seems a bit cleaner, especially around the antennas and some of the smaller parts. But otherwise, same sprue. The different sprue here is for the fuselage and the wings. Now this kit mentions that it's the standard wing on the 190 A8, which I believe basically means it uses a 20mm cannon instead of a 30. There are a few little subtle differences, and I will get out the A5 sprue to show you. So the main difference really with the A8, as far as I can tell visually, is you have this access hatch to, I believe, like an MW50 injection system, whereas on the A5, as you can see, there is no access hatch. I believe the A8 also eliminated the landing gear doors on the inner part there, so that won't be included. Plus there's a few small differences, I believe, in access hatches. Like you can see there's an extra one on the A8 here at the back there, where it's not on the A5. And yeah, a few little subtle differences here and there. For the most part, they're very similar though, the same sort of length and layout, but the A8 had a lot of engine improvements and would also have a lot more armament, I believe. I will just have a brief look at these instructions, won't go into too much detail. Again, on the front, you've got the boxer and the history of the aircraft. This time, instead, it focuses more on the A8 and talks a bit about the standard wings. In terms of construction, pretty similar. The only differences are going to be that obviously we use different parts, and not all of the parts that are added to this kit are going to be used. But some things like the radar are for a particular version of the A8, and the bombs as well for the F8, which is the ground attacker. But yeah, for the most part, assembly pretty much exactly the same, as you can see. I think we have a few different options like here for the fuel tank there. Otherwise, pretty similar. And then again, marking instructions are really great, have history for the individual aircraft and their pilots, and the common stencils located on the back, which are probably going to be a little bit different as well. Otherwise though, pretty fantastic kit as well in the form of the A8, and I think it's great that Eduard reused their tools for obviously for their own benefit, but also ours. And yeah, got a great different range of markings and different choices for these 190s, and also difficulty levels with the Profi Pack and the Weekend Edition. So that wraps up our look at these two kits. In terms of pricing, I paid around about 25 AUD, not USD, for both of these kits separately. And I'd say that's pretty reasonable, and it compares quite favourably to other kits. They've got a little bit more detail, I would say, and a lot more parts and options than the Tamiya 190, although obviously they're different versions, so it is a bit of an oranges to apples comparison. But if you were just wanting a 190, didn't care what version, if you're a beginner, the Tamiya kit's probably a bit better, and it's a little bit cheaper depending on where you get it from. Whereas if you want something that's a little bit more complex, has a few more options in terms of markings and parts and variations, then the Eduard kits are definitely a great option. And you've also got the Profi packs, which I haven't, as I've mentioned, done one for the 190, although I have had a look at the Hellcat and the 109 G6 G5 Profi pack, or the dual combos, which have all the photo etch, the masks, and all the other goodies, which make them a little bit better. So it's cool that you've got the option for those if you want more detail and a little bit more of a complicated build. So there's a fair bit of variety with their kits, and the quality on them is pretty good. So I'd definitely recommend these ones and say they're probably one of the best 190s available in 1/72 scale. So thank you very much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it. If you did, please be sure to leave a like and also subscribe to the channel. And if you have any opinions on these kits or any corrections, please leave it down in the comments below. Big shout out, as always, to my wonderful patrons for helping me to fund not only buying these kits, but also the products I use when I make them. If you want to join my Patreon page, I'd really appreciate it. I'll leave a link in the description. But otherwise, thanks again for making it this far, and until the next video, as always, take care and model on.